channel. It's Ethany, aka Epi, and thank you for joining me for this video today. I want to start out obviously by apologizing for my super extended absence. I did not expect to be gone for this long, but it happened, so I'm sorry. I just kept being like, oh, I'll film tomorrow, I'll film tomorrow, I'll film tomorrow, and next thing I know, it was August. So I am really, really sorry that it took so long to get this video up, but I am really excited to be back and to be filming today and to be bringing another true crime video for you guys. Now, before I dive into the story itself, I do want to give my usual disclaimer that in doing these videos, I mean no disrespect or offense to anybody involved, none of the victims or their families. All of this is just information that I have taken off of the internet and compiled into one video. That way people who are interested in the case can come to one video to get a lot of different information. So with that being said, and without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into the story of Heather Mack. So Heather Mack was born to Shiela Von Weise-Mack and James, who also went as Jim and Mack. And Jim was a jazz musician who was a very, very devoted father, but he was a little bit older. He had children and grandchildren of his own, but this did not make him any less dedicated to Heather. Both of them were very devoted parents, and Heather, for all intents and purposes, had a really, really good life growing up. Her parents were wealthy, so she grew up in a $1.5 million house in a really nice neighborhood. When she wasn't at her super nice house, they were traveling a lot. She went to places like Greece and Rome and Italy. She got to really travel the world and had just a good childhood. Now, things started to go a little bit downhill for Heather when her father passed away when she was still pretty young. Her family was vacationing in Greece, and her father developed colon cancer, and this led to a pulmonary embolism, so he died while the family was vacationing. And this was really shocking to them and really, really hard for Heather. She really loved her father. She was really close with him. And this was something that really just shook her world to its core. Now, after this happened, Heather really stopped acting like the super sweet girl that everybody had known before. Starting around middle school, Heather started to act out. She would cut class. She was just hanging out with groups of people that were kind of rough. She was stealing a lot of money from her mom. She was sneaking out, and she was just acting like a rebellious teenager, but on levels that were a little bit more elevated because she had the money to do so. Not only that, but Heather started getting really, really abusive towards her own mother. She would hit her, she would bite her, she would kick her, and it got to the point that the police were called on Heather and Sheila over 80 times. And even though Heather was acting out, and even though she was treating her mother really horrifically, Sheila didn't want to press charges. Her daughter was really all that she had left because her husband had died, and she really just wanted to do what was best for her and wanted to be the best mom that she could. So in hindsight, she maybe should have done something about it, but in the moment, she never pressed charges. She really just tried to fix relationships with her daughter as best as she could on her own. Now, because of how bad things had gotten at home, Sheila thought that maybe if she took a vacation with her daughter and if they went somewhere together, they could have a really good bonding experience. It could help bring them together, and that maybe it would help repair the damaged relationship that they had. So at this point, Sheila started planning a trip to Bali. And she wasn't just going to take any old trip. She really went all out for Heather. She booked her and Heather 2 plane tickets that were over $10,000 each, and she checked them into a really nice 5-star resort where the rooms were over $1,000 a night. So Sheila really went all out to try to make this a good vacation for her and her daughter. But it turns out that Heather Mack had different plans as to how this vacation was going to go down. Now, Heather Mack was newly pregnant with her boyfriend Tommy Schaefer's baby, which obviously Sheila was not super happy about, and not just because Heather was really young, but also because she just wasn't really a fan of Tommy and the social group that Tommy hung out with. Sheila thought that Tommy was a really bad influence on Heather, and that Heather really could do a lot better with her life. And part of the reason that Sheila took Heather to Bali was just to get away from Tommy for a little bit, to get her away from all of this stuff happening back home. However, Heather decided that she wanted Tommy in Bali with her. So she stole her mom's credit card and bought Tommy a plane ticket that cost over $12,000 on her mom's credit card, and then also booked him a room at the same 5-star resort that her and her mother were staying at, also using her mother's stolen credit card. And it wasn't long after all of this happened that things really started to go downhill for Sheila. Around 12:30 a.m. on August 12, 2014, Tommy landed in Bali. And shortly after he landed, Heather went out to meet him. Now, around 3:30 in the morning, Sheila woke up and she realized that Heather was not in her room. Now, at this point, Sheila was pretty frantic. She had no idea what was happening. So she went down to the front desk of the hotel and started asking them, "Where's my daughter? I don't know where my daughter is. My daughter's not in the room." And it was at this point that Sheila was informed that there was another hotel room that was checked out using her credit card, and that it was for Tommy Schaefer. And at this point, Sheila was livid. Now, around this same time, Heather found her mom in the hotel lobby, realized, oh my goodness, she's freaking out. We can't have her making a scene like this. This is embarrassing. This is too much. So she told her mom, calm down. Let's go upstairs. Let's talk about this. Let's figure things out. And she took her mother upstairs. So Sheila went upstairs under the kind of idea that her and Heather were going to sit down. They were going to talk about things. They were going to figure out what was going on. But Heather had different plans, and her and Tommy's plans were a lot darker than that. And those plans actually involved killing Sheila. Not only so that Heather could have more freedom and could get away from her mother, but also that they could inherit some money. So originally they had talked about doing like a staged suicide and making it look like Sheila had killed herself, but they weren't really sure how to pull that off, and they weren't really sure how to go about it and make it look convincing. So after a little bit of discussion, they just decided that blunt force trauma was the way to go. Just beat Sheila to death and get it over with. So after a little bit of deliberation and discussion, Heather told Tommy that Tommy needed to come down to the room and that it was time to kill Sheila because it was essentially a now or never situation. Things needed to happen now or things were going to escalate out of control. So Tommy took a fruit bowl from his room that had a very heavy metal handle, and he went from his room into Heather and Sheila's room. Now, it's been determined that upon entering Sheila and Heather's room, Tommy attacked Sheila almost immediately. There was no time for her to really fight back. There was no time for her to really know what was happening. Now, there were signs of a struggle. She had broken fingernails. She had scratch marks on her. So it did show that Sheila put up a fight, but ultimately she just could not fight off Heather and Tommy, and they ended up murdering Sheila in her hotel room. Now, immediately after murdering Sheila, Heather and Tommy started panicking. They started kind of realizing what exactly they had just done, and they started figuring out how are we going to get away with this? What do we do now? Where do we go from here? What do we do with the body? They had a lot of questions, and they realized they needed to act pretty quickly. So at first, Tommy just wanted to leave. He said, let's just leave her here. Let's just get out of here. Let's go away. But Heather refused to leave her mother alone, dead in the hotel room. Even though she had just murdered her, it was still her mother, so she didn't want to just leave her dead body there. So instead of leaving her there, what they chose to do was take Sheila's body and essentially fold it up and fit her inside of her own suitcase. Now, once Sheila was secured inside of her own suitcase, Tommy and Heather went downstairs. And after they got downstairs, they walked through the hotel lobby, went outside, hailed a taxi, put the suitcase containing the body of Shiela Von Weise-Mack into the trunk of the taxi cab. And at this point, the hotel staff had came out and asked them, hey, how are you guys going to pay for the 2 rooms that you had checked out under you? Like, you guys have to pay for these before you leave. And Tommy and Heather just really started to panic. Here was a taxi cab with a suitcase containing the body of her mother, who she had just murdered. And then right here was hotel staff who was asking how she was going to pay for this room when she had no real plans on how to pay for it. And they panicked. So they just fled. They said, okay, we'll be right back. Let's go figure out what's going on. And they fled. They ran away. So Heather and Tommy escaped off of the hotel property, and they found a just cheaper motel less than a mile away, and they decided, let's just check in there for a little bit until we can figure out how to get away with this. And that is where they went. However, when they were checking in, hotel staff was like, this is a little weird that they're checking in with no luggage. You know, they're in Bali, they're vacationing. How do they have nothing with them? So the hotel staff actually alerted the authorities. And it didn't take long for the authorities to put two and two together and realize that these were the people who had just killed the woman at the other hotel, and they came and arrested Tommy and Heather. Now, originally, Tommy and Heather had tried saying that a gang had came in, it had kidnapped them, that they killed Sheila, and that Tommy and Heather had gotten away, and there was some big grand story that they were trying to make up. But after text messages were found that could trace conversations planning to kill Sheila way back, even before the trip to Bali, Heather and Tommy realized that they were pretty screwed. And it didn't take long for them to go to court. Now, originally, they were actually facing the death penalty by a firing squad. However, shortly after all the charges were brought upon them, the death penalty was dropped, and it was decided that that's not what they were going to be seeking, and that wasn't going to be that serious of a punishment. And that instead, they were just going to be receiving prison time. So on April 21st of 2015, Heather Mack was sentenced to 10 years in prison for aiding and abetting, and Tommy Schaefer was sentenced to 18 years in prison for the actual murder itself. Many people were confused on how their sentences were so light. These two people had planned a murder, had murdered a woman, had shoved her into a suitcase, had left her in the trunk of a taxi cab, had done all sorts of horrific things, and really only got 10 and 18 years, which isn't that long of a sentence. So a lot of people were questioning how this could have happened, and it turns out that Heather Mack was actually able to access a pretty decent hunk of her family's money while she was in prison. And she was able to use that for her legal team, and obviously it paid off because 10 years is a really light sentence. Now, the courts also reported that they went a little bit lighter on Tommy and Heather because they genuinely seemed remorseful. They seemed like they felt bad about what they had done. Heather seemed like she really regretted killing her mother. In addition to that, Heather was pregnant upon the time of the murder and the arrest and everything, and that kind of helps people have a little bit more sympathy for her. So Heather has since given birth to her and Tommy's daughter. They named her Stella, and under the laws where she is, she was actually allowed to keep her daughter with her for 2 years while she was in prison, and she was allowed to raise her for those first couple years of her life. When she turned 2, she went to go live with another family, and that family has agreed to take care of Stella until Heather gets out of prison. Now, Heather and Tommy are not together anymore. They broke up kind of while everything was happening, and Heather's life since all of the trial and her life in prison has still managed to garner quite a bit of fame and attention, just because of how kind of bizarre her prison life has been. It's just been really relaxed, really chill. There's been social media footage of her like drinking and partying and dancing, and apparently she's has a girlfriend in prison, and she just really seems to not be enjoying herself, but not really be experiencing prison in the sense that most people would think about it. In addition, she took the time to post and record a video to YouTube where she talked about the crime, she talked about Tommy, she talked about her mother killing her father and all sorts of crazy stuff, and then later said that she didn't mean anything she said in the video. It was all under duress, which really got people talking because the whole video itself was bizarre. The fact that she was able to post it from prison is bizarre. Just what she said in the video was bizarre.
Okay, so this is a video that I need to make. A lot of the times, since I've been a kid, I've heard the truth sets you free, the truth sets you free, and I never understood, but I'm Heather Mack, and I want to be set free.
Heather Mack has just had a really interesting story, and considering she still has a few years left in prison, I imagine we'll probably still be hearing about her or from her a few times before she gets out, because she has a tendency to kind of keep her name in the news and keep herself relevant. So yeah, that is it for today's story. Thank you guys for joining me today for this video. It really does feel good to be back. It feels a little weird to be filming. It's been a while, so sorry if I'm rusty. If you enjoyed this, please be sure to give me a big thumbs up. And if you enjoy stuff like true crime, missing people, conspiracy theories, things that kind of get your mind going, be sure to hit that subscribe button below. And until next time, I love you all very much, and we will touch base soon.